So welcome to day 4, which in Thailand is equivalent to day 2, stage 2. So we're, as you know, we're breaking down the 8-day Thailand ride into stages. So today you'll see some beautiful scenery as we continue down the coast. Thank you everyone for joining. I think I've seen most of you online before, so you'll know that I'm Claire from Hands. I'm going to assume you've already started pedaling, getting warmed up on this chilly morning. Wanted to call out do a couple of shout outs this morning. We've seen some amazing progress from people this week, and Pete and I have been sitting there each night looking at the leaderboard and just seeing what people are doing out there, what activities going on, and we've got our first team that have cracked 200 Ks. The odd couple, as they are known, Amy and Willie. And Willie's quite possibly our oldest rider on the challenge. So they've gone and smashed out 200 Ks in the last 3 days. So that's amazing. Coming in close behind, we've got the Lady Hawks and Team Alterix, who they'll be on track to hit 200 in the next couple of days. And then leading the individuals is Tom Mitchell, who he's embarked on this mission with his dog, and it's been awesome just to watch the walking and the riding, and yes, he's got a little trailer for his dog, and it's pretty amazing. So he's at about 160 Ks, which is awesome. So keep up the great work, guys. Now today we are, as I said, we're traveling down the Gulf of Thailand. We're still riding from Hua Hin to Prachuap Khiri. Now this is stage 2 of stage 2 of a 4-leg stage. So the sun is shining, but it's actually a little cloudy, but it's certainly a lot warmer than what it is in Australia. Now today I'm joined by Mike Tomolaris and Greg Wallace. Now Tomo, for those that were on the call the other day, so Tomo is one of the longest serving members of SBS sports team, having worked on many international events such as the European Football Championships and the FIFA World Cup tournaments. He has since developed a love affair with cycling and is now the network's face of the two-wheeled sport. His passion for cycling developed when he was seconded to cover the Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic. His enthusiasm for the sport grew to new levels when he first travelled to Europe for the start of the most prestigious cycling event of them all, the Tour de France. Tomo has gone on to cover 13 Tour de France editions for SBS.
No, 26.
More, Tomo.
24. Yeah. That's old copy. That's old copy.
That's old copy. Jeez,
yeah.
We got to update this. Sorry, mate. And he also joined us on a ride in Thailand. So he joined us for the digital live ride back in March. So has been able to ride these roads and take in the scenery. And I'll let Tomo share a bit more about Greg. But Greg a couple of years ago, believe it or not, actually ran this ride. So, yep, 800 kilometres. He decided he would put on his running shoes and run from Bangkok down to Khao Lak. I don't think I've ever met a madder person, but he's a wonderful human, and so excited to have Greg here today. So welcome, and I'll throw it over to both of you.
Yeah, thanks, CT. Hello to you, Greg. Nice to meet you for the very first time. And I guess it's strange that we're meeting for the first time through cyberspace, because we're neighbours, I've learned to discover. We live in the south of Sydney, very close. Well, you live in Oatley. I'm very close to Oatley. And apparently we frequent the establishments around that particular suburb on numerous occasions. So nice to meet you through cyberspace.
Thanks, Michael. And yes, it is a small world. And I think southern Sydney and Oatley is one of those places where a lot of people run, a lot of people cycle, and there's a lot of activity, particularly in lockdown.
And a lot of birds are chirping where you are as well. You got a bird there, have you?
Yes. It's I always said birthday gift.
Well, let's learn more about you, Greg. I'm reading that you're 50 years of age. You've been running for how long, tell us?
About 12 to 13 years, since about 40, after doing a lot of sport as a young kid. I had those mid-30s to 40s where not a lot of activity, quite sedentary. And then I needed to get out and do something. and decided to take up running after it was suggested to me. And I laughed at someone, and then I had a crack, and I just didn't stop.
Well, you're not doing 100-meter sprints. You're an ultra marathon runner. Why ultra marathon? I mean, it's so time consuming. You need to plan your days. Time management, I guess, is very important.
Look, I just started out literally doing a around the block, doing a fun run, and I wanted to do a marathon for some reason. I had fixated on. I thought I really wanted to do a marathon. I trained for the city to surf, got sick and actually didn't do it, and then did a half marathon. I went, oh, well, that wasn't too bad. Let's have a crack at this marathon. So I did a marathon, the Sydney Marathon. My feet never hurt so much for about a week, 2 weeks after. It's one of those elements, I think, where you get the adrenaline rush or the buzz afterwards. And I went, okay, wouldn't mind doing something more. And a friend of mine around the corner has done a couple of long events, and I went, I might have a crack at one of those. So I went and did a 100K run up in the Hunter Valley. That took me about 18 hours. It was uphill, down dale. And at the end of it, I was horrified. I was very angry at the end of it, and thought what a stupid thing this is to do. And actually wanted to turn around and go and give the medal back to the organisers and say, this is a dumb thing. I jumped on the internet and went looking for more. And I think for me, Michael, it's the challenge of the longer distance. It's not so much about how far you can go, or there's always someone who goes farther, goes faster, goes more extreme. I think for me, it's what I get out of it is I get mental clarity from, I think, the time out, the time to your thoughts, the time to plan, and your mind goes through so many things. But I think it's the persistence, the resilience, and I like pushing things.
Greg, the first time I ever heard the word ultra marathon was, for those of us old enough to remember, was Cliff Young, when he ran from Sydney to Melbourne. I can't remember the year, but I'm pretty sure it was the early 80s. And there was this Greek guy as well. I can't recall his name, but he became a bit of a legend as well. Were those, Giannis, that's right, Giannis. Were those guys inspirational for someone like yourself?
I'll be honest and say no. Look, I remember those days and Cliffy Young and the gumboot shuffle and all those elements. I'll be honest, I don't think those things inspired me. I think the events I did, the enjoyment I got out of it, the people I met, and the ultra community is not a large running community, but the people who are there, while you're competing against them in races, they want you to succeed. You want them to succeed. You'll be talking to them as you run. They'll help you. You'll help them. Your support crews around you at checkpoints will help each other, and it has a real sense of camaraderie. And I think that sort of stuff is the enjoyment I got out of it. And the countryside and those sorts of things are probably what inspires me more so than an individual person.
Yeah. Well, as a cyclist myself, I think I know where you're coming from. I love to ride my bike in the countryside because the bike can take you to places that a motor car, and on most occasions, cannot take you. And I guess that's the same with running. Although you are on the road, you see things that you don't normally see when you're in the motor car. Am I right there?
Oh, absolutely. And look, I do a combination of road and a lot of trail. And look, as an example, the last couple of weeks I've been up in the Blue Mountains on some remote tracks. And I've just been lucky enough each time to see some beautiful sunrises over valleys and have black cockatoos sitting or flying above me in trees. And those sorts of very small things are special, and you don't get those. And even if I'm looking now at the footage from Hua Hin, and remembering those roads, and while you're on the bike and you're going past them at say anywhere 20 to early 30 kilometers an hour, and I'm running that at probably more than 10 to 12 kilometers an hour, you know, you see and you take in things so much more, and and to see the little huts and houses and have people wave at you. Special to be able to look at a temple and look at it for quite some time as you're going past. They're just special things.
Well, see, on a bike, we're traveling probably on average 25 kilometers per hour. It takes you a lot longer to cover the distances down the coast of Thailand on foot than we are on two wheels. So I guess you've got a lot more time to absorb the scenery, but I guess you've also got a lot more time to think about what you're doing, perhaps think about your life, think about your future, think about your fast. What I'm saying is you've got a lot more time to think and see what's ahead of you. Am I right there?
Oh, absolutely, Michael. And I think that's the thing. People ask me, do you listen to music? And for me, no, but I'll have songs in my head. So that's that Throwback Thursday tune earlier that was on from Claire will be in my head on the treadmill later today. But you'll think about work, your family, you'll think about your running technique, get your hips forward, get upright. You'll look at the trees and go, wow, doesn't that look beautiful? You'll think about the piece of work you haven't finished yet. You'll get an idea about something. You'll think about your running techniques, get your shoulders upright. You'll think of so many things. That's, I think, perhaps the first point from the mental side of it. Just so many different things go through your mind, but it all seems to just settle and give you peace with it. At the pace side, so running down from Thailand, and I remember this section of road is for me doing that ride. The riders, I think by memory, would start about 7:30 in the morning.
Yep, that's right.
Finish 3 to 4 p.m. depending on the day.
After some long lunches.
Yeah, I'd be up around sort of 3:30, 4.
Oh, right.
Be on the road by about 4 to 4:30, and I'd
Tell me, what's Thailand like at 3:30 in the morning? Is it very quiet, or are people up and about?
It's very quiet. The dogs are still there. They come out and say hello. And you might get the odd person. The smell's there, the fish drying on the racks, those smells are there. And they last a lot longer when you're going past at 10 kilometres an hour, Michael, than at 25 kilometres an hour. It's very peaceful. And as you go down the Gulf of Thailand, you get the morning light rising. And just the slight breeze off the beach. It is stunning and it is beautiful. And you think, how lucky am I?
Yeah, we saw some of those sunrises in March of this year. Absolutely stunning when the sun rises over the Gulf.
Yes. And again, they're those special moments where you go, how lucky am I? Yes, I'm in Thailand. It's going to get hotter today. It's going to get harder today. We have a long way to go, but I could be on a commuter train crammed in with other people, all looking like they've sucked lemons. I could be in a supermarket fighting for toilet paper. But I'm getting to see and enjoy and experience this. It's wonderful. And when I did the ride, I had my family with me, helping me. And that just makes these things so much special.
Greg, what sort of reception do you get when the locals do wake up at 6 or 7 a.m. and they see an Aussie wearing a cap, perhaps a sawn-off singlet or a sawn-off shirt with jogging shoes running through their village? What sort of reception do you receive?
I get mixed. Most people would come out and look at you. Some would wave. Actually, quite a lot would wave. There's a theme of, and I think, excuse my Thai, I think the phrase is "can bar," which we worked out through. We had a Thai driver in our van, was crazy man. And what I do, Peter, is because the way the heat was, it would be anywhere from the first 200 meters to the first 5 kilometers. Off would come the shirt, which for Thai culture is not really the done thing, but for Western, it's sort of okay. So I'd run without a shirt, and people would just look at me and go, "Crazy man," all the time, all through the day. And I did have actually at one stage, and I think it was day 7, I ran through a village and past a hut, and a guy jumped on his moped, rode up beside me, and goes, "Where you go?" And I said, "Khao Lak." And he pulled a funny face at me. "Where you go?" I said, "Khao Lak." And he points to the back of his moped, jump on, I'll take you there. This was about, I don't know, 70 or 80K from Cowlack still. He's going, jump on, I'll take you. And had to try and explain, no, I'm running. He's going, why are you running? I don't get it. But mostly the locals were sort of surprised to see a 50-year-old Western man running through fairly remote areas. But again, wherever we stopped for food or anything along those lines, so hospitable, so warm, so lovely. And again, I love the Thai people and their approach.
Well, just on that, when we did the ride in March this year and the several rides previous conducted by Hands Across the Water, I mean, we're so well looked after in terms of accommodation, in terms of the morning teas, the lunches, the dinners. You know, we're well fed, we're well looked after. We've got a good team around us, the cyclists I'm talking about. Yourself, when you're running 19 marathons in 8 days, I assume you're on your own. Tell us how important nutrition is, fueling yourself, watering yourself and all the rest of it. How do you do it and how do you monitor it?
I think, well, first of all, a couple of things, Michael. One of those, and apologies for my noisy bird, one of those things is while you're enjoying your lovely lunches at the hotel, I had no hope of those. I was still about 30 kilometres or 40 kilometres behind you. When you were tucking into your nice meals at the hotels, I was still out on the road for a couple of hours at most times. So I didn't get to enjoy quite necessarily all those comforts, although I did stay generally in the same hotels, which were wonderful to stay in when we got there. As I said earlier, we would start probably about 3:30 to 4 in the morning. I would get up, I would eat, and I'll double back on that at the moment. When we headed out, I'd have about 2 hours of different drinks and some basic food, and that would get me through till about 7:30, 8 o'clock, when my support crew, or my family and a close friend would turn up, and they would have changes of clothes, food, more drink, all those sorts of things. And we'd do it in sort of that stage. From a nutrition perspective, one thing I couldn't afford to do was to get sick or to have any stomach issues. So I had to eat a fairly constrained diet. So what I fell into a habit of is I ate an awful lot of fried rice, an awful lot of stir-fried vegetables with that as well. From a drink perspective, I'd planned prior to the event to have a drink every 45 minutes. And that's like think of a 600 ml Mount Franklin bottle. In Australia, I have one of those probably every hour, and then electrolyte every 4 hours. Very quickly, that became every 20 minutes, I'd be having a drink, about every 40 minutes, an electrolyte. And the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges was probably not so much the food. I was getting enough food into me. It was the fluid, just sweating so much. You'd appreciate it would be warm, and then about 10 o'clock was like someone turned on heat lamps. Yeah. The temperature jumped 5 to 10 degrees. And we'd planned, if I looked at all Thailand, Bangkok, all down the Gulf of Thailand, the average temperatures during January, they were going to be about 25, 27. They ended up being 33 to 35. Average humidity of that period generally is around sort of 65 to 75%. It was 85 to 95%. So getting fluid in an enormous amount, and we record that. So one of my family, one of my crew members, one of their roles was to record what I was having. And then the support crew would tell me, Greg, they'd pull up beside me in the van, you haven't drunk enough, get more into you. You're behind on your food, get more into you.
So you do have support crew.
Would you like an ice cream? There's a shop 2 Ks up, move your ass.
So you do have a support crew. You mentioned your wife. Tell us about the other support members.
So even though ultra running and those things seems like a singular sport, Michael, it's a team game. You cannot get there without the help of others. And that comes in 2 fronts. That comes physically from the jobs they do, and then emotionally as well. So my family support me in activities I've done before. For this, my wife, Julie, as soon as I said I was doing it, she said, great, I'm in. My daughter, who's about 24, I mentioned it to her as she literally walked around the corner of the house. She said, I'm in. My son, who's about 18 at the time, walked down the hall and said, what are we doing? And I told him. He said, I'm in. And my younger son, who was 12, 13 at the time, just walked down the hall and said, I'm in. What are we doing? And I told them. And to have so my family come, but they all played set roles. A close friend, Andrew McCallum, who's supported me on other events, came. He was my crew chief. And we also had a driver, Otto, like Ty, who translated for us, knew the roads, all those sorts of things. My wife, Julie, has a medical background. So she kept an eye on me from that front, massaged me probably every 2 to 3 hours. At night, I'd get a massage before I went to bed. First thing in the morning, and I'd often go to bed and Julie would be washing my running gear. You know, I'd get up and she'd be already up. You know, and I'm talking about only I'm getting 5, 6 hours sleep, and she did that day after day after day. My daughter looked after all the social media aspects. One of my other sons was my gear steward. And believe me, you go through lots of changes of clothes when it's 35 degrees in Thailand. And they need a lot of organising and washing and all those sorts of things, and rotating through shoes. I had my other son was a photographer. My daughter's husband, Nathan, he also came and he filmed the event. And what's really exciting is actually in a couple of months, we'll have a documentary out on it. It's been professionally filmed. He's a professional filmmaker. He filmed the run. My other son actually is a music composer, and he's composed music, and we're really excited about that coming out shortly. But delving back to your original point, nutrition is really crucial. You need to stay on top of it. And so you track it, like all things, you report it, and then you can see I've had too much, I've not had enough, or I've got my mix incorrect. And that's why you start to run off the energy cliff.
Yeah. Hey, Greg, now let me get this right. You are running this week, yes, in cahoots with the month-long exercise that all the cyclists are doing. Am I right there?
You're right, except I'm not running this week. I'm running this month.
This month. That's what I meant to say.
So I've signed up for the 800.
Yeah.
For me, I have to do 27K a day nearabouts. So then what I'm doing is doing a little over 30, and that'll give me a rest day, or I'll just have to do a little bit on the 7th day. So the idea is I do the 800 as well. I'm fundraising. I'm doing all those things the riders are doing, except I'm running it. I've done 84 Ks so far. I did have done, I think, 81 by memory, by average, so I'm slightly ahead. So I'm doing, but I've my knee's given into me at the moment. So rather than being out on the road like I was the first day or two, I'm now on the treadmill. So for next week, I'll be doing 30K a day on the treadmill. So
by talking to me today, have you had to adjust your program? Would you have started earlier?
Yeah. Look, if I was if I was on the road, I would have done 2 hours and done probably 22K and be home by about 6:30, 6:45, and knock that over. And then do 10K in the afternoon. Because of the treadmill and it's in the house, it's a little noisier. So I would have started it probably about 6:30, 7 o'clock, and done 2 hours and then do an hour after lunch. So doing this call just puts me back a little bit, and I'll jump on there probably at about in about an hour's time and knock out 2 hours, and then another hour this afternoon. That's my 32K.
Well, Greg, you said you'll be running on the treadmill. Is that different to running on the road? Is it a softer landing? I mean, running on the road, I guess, is a high impact on the legs, on the knee. Is that not the case on the treadmill? Is that why you're doing it on the treadmill?
I'm actually doing it on the treadmill because the medial ligament went on me Monday morning out on the road, which means I can run straight, but corners aren't good for my knee support and stability, and to just help it heal up so I can run straight. The other thing is running on a treadmill, there's no camber. And one of the challenges on roads is if you're running on the left side, you're always running slightly that way. If you're running on the right side, you're always running slightly that way. And too much of either is not good. So running on a treadmill, there's no camber, so that helps keep me more stable while my knee heals up over the next week and removes the inflammation. The other thing is you're only running in a straight line. So from that perspective, it's good for technique. The challenge is I need to start listening to Claire's Throwback Thursday playlist because it's pretty boring looking at a wall for 2 hours. A lot goes through your mind. You still want to do something to look at, and you miss this natural stimulus of the forest or the trees, or there's a new house being built that I hadn't looked at over there, or those sorts of things, you know. So you miss the natural stimulus, and you miss the, I suppose, any of the bush smells in the air and all that sort of stuff. But just means it's a bit more boring, but it's got to be persistent. And like all things, if you're persistent, you get there.
Well, Greg, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, that injuries are common when you're doing as many kilometres and long distances as you do. How much of a setback when you're planning something that takes days and days to complete, how much of a setback is a knee injury or a leg injury or illness? And is it common in your case?
Look, I'll be honest, I'm probably been fairly lucky. I think I've got good biomechanics and genetics. I've never really had any major issues. For the amount of stuff I've done, it's always been, I think the worst I've had is a couple of calf tears and small hamstring tears. It's usually niggles. And because you put a lot of effort in training leading up to an event, you're normally carrying niggles going into the event as much as you want to be fresh. It's mostly a case of having the right people around you. And I've got really good physios, but also exercise physiologists I use who help me and help mitigate an injury or also manage it so I get back to recovery as quickly as possible and is doing the right thing. So if you have a rehab program, you do it. With long distance running, there's also a difference between hurt and really hurt. You know things are going to hurt. So when it happens, it always happens. You always get pain. You get it sooner than you expect or later than you expect. You just deal with it. And it's almost like it turns up and you go, oh, I knew it was going to hurt. It's a bit later than I thought, or it's a bit earlier. But there's a difference between that and I've done something and that's bad and I know it's bad. And that's the point where I need to stop and be smart about it. So using an example, the other day my knee went, I know that wasn't good. It felt okay running straight but not turning, so I just kept doing as much straight line as I could, and then I went off and got the right medical treatment and perspectives, and that gave me a view, and I've adapted to that. So if you have an injury, you try not to just, I suppose, push through it. If it's in a race, you just make a call on what's the smart thing to do. You always want to be smart about what you do.
Greg, you know, there's nothing worse, speaking from experience, for a cyclist to wake up in the morning and hear the rain falling, see the roads wet, and at this time of the year, temperatures plummeting down to pretty close to zero in some cases. It's nice to run down the coast of Thailand when it's when the mornings are mild before the heat kicks in. But what's it like during those icy conditions? I see here that you have run from, you've done the legendary 240 kilometres coast to Kosciuszko run more than a few times. So you've run in warm conditions and also in icy conditions. What do you prefer, and what's running in icy, cold, wet conditions like for you?
With coast to Kosciuszko, it's lucky it's early December. So you start on the coast, right on the beach on the high tide watermark, and it's lovely and normally nice and warm. And it's only once you get up on the Cooma Plains that the cold kicks in. Here in Sydney, what I will say, Peter, is with the cold, you have the right equipment. And it's okay. I don't mind. I'm quite happy going out in the cold quite generally, although as I get older, I seem to have an extra layer of clothes on. There's a temperature range. If it's below 15 degrees, go to a long sleeve shirt. Below 12, go to a long sleeve shirt and a singlet. Below 8 degrees, go to long pants. And you use gloves and things to help control your temperature. But probably my challenge is the rain. So if I wake up and I hear the rain, that's a stay in bed.
You turn over.
That's a stay in bed. But if I get up, I get out and go down the driveway, and I get out and I'm 100 meters down the road and it starts pouring, no, you keep going. It's almost like there's a little barrier there. And if it's raining when I wake up, no, I'll stay in bed.
Now tell us this, shoes. How many pairs of shoes do you go through?
Probably not as much as people think. You usually get sort of around, depending on the shoe and the terrain you use, anywhere from 800 to 1200 kilometers out of a pair of shoes. I use Hoka 1-1, which I've never had any issues with, but and again, I try to use the right shoe for the right thing. I'll probably get 2.5 to 4 months out of a pair of shoes, depending. And it's one of those elements where you can buy as much as you like, but you also need to be conscious of your budget and looking at more how much you're spending here and there. So I'll probably go through 4 to 5 pairs of shoes a year. In an event such as like Thailand, I took, I think 5 pairs of shoes with me. One of those was a really old, comfortable pair that, like an old pair of slippers, you always put on and you just feel at ease in. The others all had probably about between 50 and 100 kilometers of wear in them. So they were quite comfortable and would fit around my foot. And with those, what you do is they're all numbered, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'd rotate them. So every few hours, you'd go into a different shoe. For one reason would be you'd want the shoe to help spring back a little bit in the sole. The second reason would be mostly it puts different pressure points on your foot. The longer you're in a pair of shoes, you can go a day or two in one pair of shoes doing an ultra marathon, but you increase the rate of blisters and just because the pressure points. So you put on a different pair of shoes, even though they're the same make, same size, you've worn them the same amount of time, they're just slightly different and they just touch your feet a little bit different, and that takes a little bit of pressure off. So go through quite a few pairs of shoes, but perhaps not as many as people think. But maybe you get blasé about it. And I'm sure when people come to my door and see a rack there and there's about a dozen pairs on it, they go,
Yeah. Well, some people, in my case, have got bikes in their garage walls. There's about 10 or 12 of them. Which bicycle will I use today? In your case, it's which pair of shoes? Which pair of shoes will I wear today?
Indeed. And I'm actually looking at, I've got my bike sitting over here on the wind trainer. I think it's probably got spider webs on it at the moment. Yeah, it is a case. But again, it's like a thing to, if I'm going trail, I have a shoe that has a slightly more gnarly tread. And I've got a more premium pair, which is just feels like beautiful running. And again, for really rough conditions, but most of them are just nice and comfy on the road. You want to feel comfortable.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Greg, I remember legendary Australian runner Pat Farmer. Have you met him, by the way?
I haven't, although I remember Peter Baines was talking to Pat just as I was about to do the ride, and about to do the run. He was quite interested. I've not met Pat, but I've read some of his exploits, and again, they're just amazing things.
Yeah, they're amazing. I mean, he's ran around Australia a couple of times, I think. I'm going off memory here. I remember once he ran from the top of North America down to the bottom of South America. One particular year. I mean, that's such a, can't get my head around that. Yeah. What do you think about it? I think he stopped now. He went into politics for a bit, state politics and federal politics, ran again, but I think he's probably stopped now, or certainly doesn't do the long distances he used to do. What do you think of his exploits and some of the incredible achievements that he's put together in his life? I mean, it's hard to put your head around, isn't it?
It is. I'll say the political side is, again, obviously there's a calling there, and perhaps that's about wanting to help people. And one of the things I find about running is it really does open your heart about helping people, because you're also humbled by how much people help you with different things. I did read of Pat when he ran from effectively the North Pole to the bottom of South America to the tip. I apologise, I can't remember the name down there.
Cape Horn, I think.
And he said the hardest part, one of the hardest parts was the very first morning. The helicopter dropped him and his team in, and then his team went off ahead, and he was just there on his own going, well, I'm all on my own. I've got to do this. He said that was probably one of the hardest moments, that first step. But one of the lessons out of Pat, and I know Curly Deer is joining the call in a week or two. and Curly ran from Broken Hill to Sydney. And again, there are lessons there. Curly provided really good advice, which was around, it's really tough to do more than 80K a day. I know Pat Farmer, when he did his pole, effectively a pole to pole, he was doing around, on average, 40 to 44 per day, I think, by memory. So again, it's a plan. You push the body, but you're also managing the body, and it's about the long game. So if you try to do too much in one day, that is just too much and it breaks you, it's so hard to back up and puts the rest at risk. So you need to manage it. And his ability to manage not just the distance, but to manage the political, economic environments going through, and any safety concerns in Central or the top of South America, and to be safe and to do all that and to deal with the rain in Nicaragua and all those places. It's amazing, but the journey he would have been on and the things he would have seen, and like even some of the terrain we're seeing now on the bike, just beautiful.
And I remember on some occasions there's political unrest in some of those Central American countries that he had to confront and try to avoid as well. So there's a lot to be said when you're running from the top of North America to the tip of South America. Now, tell me about you, Greg. What's your plan now? Would you like to run across Australia, or do do a monumental run, like perhaps run across America, or what's the future hold for you?
That's a very good question. I haven't answered that, Michael. I'm not. I get excited when I see an event. All right. So I don't tend to go, what's something that can push me, and will I run from here to Timbuktu? At the moment, would have just been landing back yesterday. I was supposed to do a event in the Scottish Highlands, a 400 odd kilometre run over some amazing remote terrain in the West Scottish Highlands. And again, what attracted me to that was I just saw a short video clip of that race. And it's you do about 50 or 60K a day, but there's about 2,500 meters of ascent in the run, which is a fair bit. And just the scenery was just mind blowing, and the remoteness. That's the sort of thing that appeals to me, rather than necessarily how far can I go or what can I do. There is, if I had to say I had a pipe dream of something I'd like to do, which is, unless I do it fairly soon, it'll get beyond me, because it's as I'm getting older, like we all are. It's called Enduroman, or Arch to Arc, where you run from Marble Arch to Folkestone, and you've got
in Western Australia.
No, in England.
Oh, in England.
Marble Arch
in London. Yeah, yep.
140K. You then swim the channel.
Oh.
And then you then cycle from Wissant to the Arc de Triomphe.
Wow.
That's about 300 odd K in the cycle.
So it's an ultra triathlon.
Yeah. It's called Arch to Arc. So it's a 140K run, the 36K channel swim, which is extremely daunting, and I'm not a swimmer, so that would be the hardest thing for me. And then the 300K cycle. And I do cycle a bit. So if I had a pipe dream, that would be something that I'd like to do. And maybe I should get off my backside and do that. But
is that an event? Is that an organised event?
I'm sorry?
Is that an organised event?
It is, but it's not run as a race. You do it as a solo competitor. You have a steward who goes with you. You book a channel swim, the same as all other channel swimmers do. So it's like an individual person does it, but you're marshaled through it. So it's recorded appropriately and done.
Well, you've been running, you say, for 13 years since you were 37. How many more years do you think the body can handle doing what you've been doing for the last 13?
Well, I know a number of people who are in their 70s and doing this sort of stuff, doing it albeit slowly. When I first looked at Scotland, it's again a stunning race. It's a little bit expensive to do. And I said, I'd like to do that. And my wife looked at it and went, it's stunning. You should go do it. And I said, yeah. And I was a little bit hesitant. She said, well, you're getting older. You probably haven't got many more left in you. So I took that as a kick in the pants and went and entered it. But I'd probably just cut back a bit and still do other things. And I think what appeals to me, Michael, is the experience, like the scenery you're looking at right now, and to be looking at that, to be looking through the trees, to see the wildlife, doing the run the last few Ks before Cowlack, seeing elephants on the side of the road and getting to see and be with those. There's not many places you run where you get chased by monkeys down the road, you know, special things. And I think doing the shorter distances, but it's the experience and the joy that brings is what would drive me later on rather than just.
Yeah. Were the dogs a problem in Thailand?
Dogs were a challenge. I used to get chased and bitten by dogs as a kid. That was my pet fear, but I had a support person beside me on a bike at all times who were navigating.
Okay.
And as we came up to a dog or a dog came out, they would move slightly ahead of me. As we went past the dog, they'd drop slightly behind me and that would be fine. If the dogs doubled around the back, that was a challenge. And they had a few even come in and run in beside us, making things a bit interesting. But that was mostly just because of me and a bit of a fear of dogs. But even though I've got a couple of dogs behind me, but a big concern for me, but my crew thought I was a bit silly.
Well, Greg, we're approaching the finish line here. Good luck for the rest of the month. What you're doing is just simply incredible. You need more than 24 hours in a day for what you're doing. Are there times when you wish you had more than 24 hours in a day?
Yes, but a wise man once told me we all have 24 hours. It's just how we use them.
Yeah, that is so true. Well, good luck. You've still got 25 days to go, or maybe more, 26 days to go. And you'll be running every day during the month of June, correct?
Looks like oh no, he's still there.
Yeah.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Greg, for joining us this morning. And geez, that arch to arc sounds very interesting.
Not if you're watching CT.
Yeah, totally. I might have to go and have a coffee with Pete and see if he'll join me on that one.
Yeah, you could do it.
He would love a 36-kilometer channel swim. Be amazing. Well, look, thank you both for joining us this morning. And I know, Tomo, I know that this is taking you away from cycling and clocking up your Ks for the challenge as well. So hopefully you both get some kilometers in today.
I've got a day off today, so I'll do a few Ks myself on the trainer.
Lucky man.
Yeah.
I'm
Love it.
In half an hour.
What's that, Pete? Say again, Pete.
It's Greg, and I'm on the treadmill in half an hour.
Okay, mate. Good luck to you. Raise a sweat for us.
I'll shoot you through that playlist, Greg.
Thank you.
back to the 80s,
right,
or is it
team.
back to the 90s for you, CT, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually, I was looking at the list and I went, oh, actually, it is a bit 90s. But I take recommendations. So look, just remember, team, I think we're all kind of in the process now. Just log your Ks on My Virtual Mission, so you can keep traveling down that coast of Thailand. If you haven't already done so, jump onto My Virtual Mission and have a look at the map view, because you can actually see where you are in Thailand at this very given moment. So it's actually pretty cool. You can go into Street View and have a look at that. Please also, if you're taking any photos, please tag us in those. We'd love to see your setups and what's going on around the country and also around the world. We've got riders in the UK, we've got someone in the States, we've got someone in the Netherlands, and then of course New Zealand. So we've certainly got a global following, which is amazing. Now, tomorrow we're going to be joined by Tomo again, who's going to be interviewing Troy Satch, he is one of Australia's most successful wheelchair basketball players. That's going to be a pretty amazing conversation. And then following that, the lunchtime session, we're going to be joined by Vince Sorrenti. So if you're up for a bit of a laugh, that's going to be one pretty fun session as well. So we've certainly got some amazing people lined up over the next month, and just to keep us punching through those Ks. But for now, it's time to continue on our day. And thanks again, both of you, and thanks to you all for your commitment and continuing to ride this challenge with us.
Pleasure,
Happy
Claire.
Thursday, everyone.
Happy Thursday. Nice to talk to you, Greg. See you around.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Claire. All the best, everybody.
See you guys.